Twilight Princess has been a fan favorite Zelda game for a long time now. The dark atmosphere, the realistic graphics, and the deep story drew in fans from around the world. In fact, this game single-handedly saved the entire Zelda franchise by selling enough copies to give Nintendo the funds they needed to continue on the path to make more masterpieces. So, you think that the sequel would be yet another renowned and praised entry to the legendary franchise, right? Link's Crossbow Training's gameplay follows Link through multiple different locations, mostly from Twilight Princess, shooting targets and enemies with his quote-unquote crossbow, which actually works more like an AK-47 with built-in bombs, and destroying everything in sight. This game has become sort of a joke among fans, because the other option was an actual sequel to Twilight Princess, a traditional Zelda game.
What are you talking about? Of course Link's Crossbow Training is a sequel. Seriously, what other Zelda game gives you such a breathtaking experience as you lob high-speed projectiles at monsters? Think about that. The excitement as your score climbs higher and higher. The rush as you 360 no-scope a pot. The one-to-one motion controls. It's perfect! Link's Crossbow Training is the perfect sequel. Not only does it do what Twilight Princess did, but it does it better. So I better not be hearing any more blasphemy, otherwise we're gonna be having rotisserie cuckoo for dinner tonight.
There isn't much to talk about on this first Ordnance stage, so let's just go over what I actually want to do in this game. As I just mentioned, I want to 100% this game because I feel like it would be funny for this to be the first Zelda game that I do that with, but I also want to find out if the game should be taken less as a joke and more as an actual fun game despite its rocky history. So I'm going to rate all 9 of the levels out of 10 across points like if the environment's cool and if it's, fun. Then I'll combine the level scores and see what the total is out of 90, and then cut it down to an out of 10 range to get the true score for the game out of 10. Each level has 3 stages, and you platinum the level by getting at least 80,000 points in total across these 3 stages. I'll also explain the highs and lows I had throughout each level. Anyway, let's actually get started. Level 1 is a surprisingly interesting level for being the first in the game. The first stage is kind of boring and you just shoot a bunch of targets across Ordnance Village, but all it's meant to do is basically show you how to use the controls in the first-person POV gameplay mode, so it makes sense to not make the first level super intense and really interesting at first. The next stage takes us to the desert and it shows off the second gameplay mode, Defender. This is when you're stationary but in a third-person point of view. It's sort of like you're a turret. The goal of the stage is to keep the stealth foes away from you by absolutely gunning them down with your crossbow that never needs to reload and for some reason has built-in bombs. I actually like this stage. It's really simple and easy to understand, yet it's still fun and takes place in an area that's pretty fun to look at. That's all the stage really needs. Now we move on to the third section, which has you go through a Boko camp near the Arbiter's grounds and kill a bunch of archer and brute Bokos. Again, I enjoy this. Not only does it use my favorite gameplay mode, which is where you can move around and shoot, but I also found the ability to build up a high combo consistently to get more points very fun, and it led me to getting over 60,000 points in that stage alone, meaning that I got my first platinum. So though I thought Ordnance Village was a bit boring, I did like the diversity of gameplay and cool areas, and I do think the difficulty was reasonable for level 1. Overall, I'd give this level a solid 7 out of 10. Time for level 2. The first stage is Goron target practice, and it entails basically just shooting a bunch of targets the Gorons are holding in a quick succession across a few different camera areas. I liked the introduction of the different kinds of targets like gold and X. I thought it made the stage a lot less mindless and more interesting than the Ordnance Village target practice. Also, the Gorons are just cooler than shooting at random targets in Ordnance Village. The next stage takes us into a canoe through Zora's River, and I don't really like this stage that much. Not only is it hard to get a satisfying combo, therefore it's hard to get a lot of points, but it's also sort of confusing. Like, am I supposed to shoot these guys? This stuff? My chat was telling me to shoot the red lamps, but they only gave me like 5 points, so apparently the only ones that give you a nice amount of points are the ones that you shoot at the end. Like, what? Anyway, the last stage is pretty cool. You shoot skulls out of the air, and though it is pretty challenging, probably one of the harder Defender levels in terms of getting a lot of points, it is super satisfying when you build up a big combo. Though I am sort of concerned as to where all these skulls came from and why they're being used for target practice. For the overall level, I think there were some good bits and there was a nice variety of areas, but it was a bit confusing and stage 2 is one of my least favorite stages. I give this level a 5 out of 10. Some bad parts and some highlights. I didn't get platinum platinum first try, but I went back a bit later and got it after a couple of attempts, so that's platinum number 2. Anyway, moving on to level 3. The first stage here brings us into Kakariko Village, and this one is basically the same as Orden target practice, but it does feel a bit more engaged with the different kinds of targets and more complex camera angles. I don't like it as much as the Goron level, but I do like it more than the Orden target practice. Moving quickly to stage 2, it brings us to Hyrule Castle, where they're setting off fruit balloon fireworks for some reason and they want you to shoot them. This one is pretty cool. It's fun to get a combo here, and I like how the balloons split up into multiple different ones after you shoot them. Also, for some reason, there are multiple meteors just falling out of the sky. I don't think that's really supposed to happen, but they give you a bunch of points if you shoot them, so I don't really care. Finally, stage 3 is a bit of a basic defender level. You just stand there and kill a bunch of these guys. The combos in this level are fun and easy though, so that's a nice little bonus. I think that stages 1 and 3 are a little bit basic, but I don't mind that. I really like stage 2, so that moves it up a notch from average. So I'd give this level a 6 out of 10, just a bit above average, which is great. I went back later in the stream and got platinum in it too, though I pretty much got all of my points from stage 2. Level 4 starts with Zora's River target practice, and after playing it for about a minute, the game and my stream crashed, so yeah. Anyway, besides that, the actual level is pretty awesome. I really like the area, and the targets moving around behind and on the waterfalls is pretty cool and an interesting mechanic. Like, you can't shoot targets behind a waterfall. A Zelda game with realistic physics? What world are we living in? Anyway, it's just another target practice level at the end of the day, but definitely one of my favorites. Stage 2 takes us to a defender level, but definitely a much more interesting one than stage 3 of level 3. Not only do I absolutely love the area and aesthetic, it's super fitting to Twilight Princess gritty atmosphere, but there are also a variety of enemies in this level, and the camera moves around a lot. It doesn't really feel like you're just a turret in this stage. There are flocks of keys that fly in from above, which are super satisfying to shoot with the bomb arrows, and there are also salvos that are easy and satisfying to score combos on the ground as well. So yeah, I really like this stage. On stage 3, the great momentum doesn't stop either. Not only does the stage take place in one of my favorite Zelda areas, but it also fits that same gritty atmosphere I mentioned before. It uses my favorite gameplay mode, the one where you have full control of Link, and the spiders aren't pushovers either. They take at least 2 arrows, and they can jump scare you and jump down from the top of places and things like that. Honestly, this is one of my favorite stages in the whole game. This might be my favorite overall level too. It's still not entirely perfect, but it sure is close. I give it a 9 out of 10. In level 5, you start in the city in the sky, which is super sick. But then you realize the entire stage is about shooting targets out of these things' vile claws. Instant 0 out of 10. For real though, it is pretty cool thematically except for these things, but in terms of gameplay, it's essentially a more basic version of Zora's River target practice. I love the area, but it's just not super unique. Moving on to the second stage, we have the biggest change in location between stages we've probably ever had in the game. We go from the city in the sky all the way down to the desert surrounding the Arbiter's grounds. Pretty crazy. Anyway, I also don't really like this stage. The main enemies are really hard to combo, and they're also really ugly, but I do like the other kind of enemies, which are really satisfying and easy to combo. They're still ugly though. I also really like the setting, but I would have loved for it to not be a defender so you could really explore it. So there are bits I don't like and bits that I do like. Overall, pretty meh. The last stage is called the Shootout, which sounds awesome, and the level is definitely one of the cooler in the game in terms of ideas, but it does have some issues. I love the idea of a western shootout between Link and a bunch of bokoblins, but some of them are so hard to find that it just turns into a game of hide and seek for like half the level. I did definitely enjoy finding the ones that aren't too well hidden, and I actually got hit a couple of times in the level from the bokos being placed in places I didn't expect, which is pretty cool and uncommon. But after many different attempts, I just never found some of the last enemies because they were hidden so well. Overall, I'll give this level a 6 out of 10. Some bits I do like and some bits that I don't, but all the ideas are pretty awesome. It took me around half an hour of tries to platinum this one too, so the levels are definitely moving up in difficulty as well. Moving to level 6, it begins with Orden Village target practice 2, which obviously takes place in the same area as the very first stage. It's basically the same thing too, except in some different bits of the village, and there are also a variety of different target types this time around. I do actually like this level. There are some challenging bits, but that makes it extra satisfying when you get a good combo. I know this area is a repeat as well, but I actually do like the parts of the town they showed in this one more than the last Orden level, so that sort of negates the repeat thing. Anyway, the second stage takes place on the back of a wagon, and you have to ride through Hyrule Field while defending the caravan from a few different kinds of enemies. I really like this level. It's one of the better defender levels in my opinion, and though it is pretty hard to hit some of the enemies, just like the previous stage, it makes it much more satisfying when you actually do get a substantial combo. You ride across a bridge, through a path, and through a couple other little areas. It also has a good variety of enemies as I mentioned before. So yeah, this stage is great. The last stage in this level brings us to my favorite area in the entire Zelda series, Snow Peak Ruins. As I quite literally just said, I absolutely love this area, so combine that with this level's freaky enemies, full control gameplay mode, and reasonable difficulty, and you've got my favorite level in the entire game. The atmosphere is absolutely amazing, and the entire level is the definition of peak. So I think the first couple of stages are above average, and the third is the best in the game. 9 out of 10. Now we get onto level 7, which is the runner-up to the level that's the bane of my existence. This level starts with target practice in an undeniably sick location. I like the gritty and dark atmosphere in this section, and I also like the intricate target movement. I really like the Gibdos at the end of the stage too. They're super satisfying to just explode with bombs, and they're also really easy to combo. Anyways, let's talk about the section that's impossible to get hits on. You're supposed to shoot these guys out of the sky, but their hitboxes are really weird, and they won't stop moving around at random points, so I couldn't really get too many points on this part. It has a really cool looking area, and I see the vision, but it's just not executed very well in my opinion. The entire section is just sort of annoying. The last part is absolutely excellent. As I mentioned in my short I made about this game, it reminds me a lot of Halo, and you just run around and destroy a bunch of Lizalfos. It's awesome. Stage 2 really brings this down so much for me though. You have to be pretty much perfect on both stages 1 and 3 in order to platinum this level, because you literally can't get above like 10,000 points on that stage. Because of this, I'm gonna put it at 7 out of 10 simply because I really like the first and third stages, but I'm taking away the other points because stage 2 is so bad. It took me like an hour to platinum it, which surprisingly isn't the worst in the video as well. I hate level 8 so much that I'm just gonna try to get through this part super fast to combat the fact that I spent 2.5 hours on this level. The aiming is broken and very hard in stage 1. Stage 2 is just impossible to get a combo because the wolves keep eating you, and stage 3, okay, stage 3 is actually cool, but it's just stressful. You have to get a certain amount of points across the first couple stages in order to actually have enough to platinum on stage 3, which is really hard. Here's the final boss fight that I absolutely cooked on. You can probably tell by my reaction that I spent a hot second on this. Dude, these worm things. Holy crap, no, that was actually crazy. Wait, yes, yes, yes. Oh my gosh. The level idea is cool, but it just sucks in execution. I'd give it a 3 out of 10. Anyway, moving on to the final level. Level 9 is pretty cool. It starts with a level where you defend Orden from a bunch of bokoblins that are trying to steal goats from your farm. This is by far the most unique Orden level out of the 3, and I think it's a fun little twist on the target practice gimmick. Now you're doing target practice on bokoblins. Wait, isn't that just shooting bokoblins? Whatever, the stage is pretty decent. Stage 2 takes place deep in the Lost Woods, and you fight Skull Kid and his minions. Not only is this pretty freaky, but also really sick. Who doesn't want to fight spooky puppet dudes in the middle of the woods? Probably me, actually. The boss fight in the final stage is a cinematic masterpiece. You gotta take down the big skeleton dude by shooting different parts on his body while he gets closer and closer while shooting flaming stuff at you. It's a very engaging and cool part of the game, and very fitting for the final level. This stage was pretty simple, but also had a sick boss fight at the end, and I liked it. I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. It only took me one more attempt to platinum it too, so that was pretty cool. And alright, with that, we have officially platinumed, aka 100%ed, Link's Crossbow Training. But did I actually like the game, or will I be turned into a rotisserie cucco? Let's do some calculations. Out of 90, I rated the game a 60, or a 6.7 out of 10. Then round this up to a 7 out of 10. This means that I think the game is great, and way above average, so I think I'm safe from the wrath of the flame tonight. So here's where the video will end. Thank you to the Bread Pyre for helping with that little skit at the beginning of the video. You can check out his channel in the description, even though you probably already know him. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, remember, subscribing is free, and as always, thanks for watching.